How do people who are blind get around?
People who are blind rely on their other senses: smell, touch, hearing, taste to help them manage in the world. Blind people have to memorize identifying features, like sounds and smells, of the places that they often go. They also have to pay close attention to where things are located in their homes in order to get around safely. Always putting objects in the same places after use so that they can be found again. Some blind people use canes or guide dogs to get around. A white cane indicates that the person using it is visually impaired. Blind people tap their canes on sidewalks, floors, and streets. They learn to identify the locations of things like steps, walls, or doors simply by the different sounds that their cane taps make. Various high-tech devices have been invented, including laser canes, that use sound or light waves that bounce off objects and send signals to the user about where these objects are located, what they might be made of, and how big they are. Guide dogs, or seeing eye dogs, are specially trained to lead blind people about. The dog and the person work as a team, with the dog following commands that help the blind person go about her day. The dog, in turn, signals the person when she is approaching a curb or when it is safe to cross a street.
Who wouldn't want such a feeling?
But not everyone can be the best on a particular day or even at a particular game or sport. Every person is unique and has his or her own strengths and talents. Just because you are not the best at some activity doesn't mean that you can't participate in it and even have fun. And as you continue to play that sport or game, your skills will probably improve. If you can see the game as a way to improve your own skills and to have fun, you may even be able to admire and learn from the talent of the person who beats you and congratulate him or her. After all, it's only a game. So remember that when you play a game, the object is to participate well. Play fairly, with respect for your teammates and opponents, and with your best effort. It is also important to show good behavior following the game, whether you win or lose. If you can do that, then you are demonstrating good sportsmanship. Being a good sport is actually much more important than being a winner.
What is a library?
A library is a collection of reading materials, and sometimes music and videos. 2. That is kept available for people to use but not to buy. The first public library was established in Greece in 330 BC for use by certain members of the population. The first circulating library, which allowed materials to be taken out by paying members and returned after use. was begun by Benjamin Franklin in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in 1732. But not until the late 19th century could the general population borrow books from public libraries for free. Today, taxes paid by people who live in cities and towns provide most of the funding for local public libraries. So, in a way, that makes you and everyone else in your community joint owners of your local library and of all the wonderful books, videos, CDs, and other resources that it has in it.
What should I do when someone's touch makes me feel bad?
Sharing a hug or kiss with someone starts with loving feelings inside. When you don't have those feelings, hugging and kissing should not be expected. You have a right to say no to touching or being touched by someone. A person's control over his or her own body is personal and private, no matter how old he or she is, and should be respected by all. Although most grown ups are nice people who care about and respect children, there are a few who do things to harm kids. One bad thing they may do is treat children in a sexual way, which is behavior that should only take place among grown ups who have a special love relationship. It is never okay for a grown-up to treat a child like this. Under any circumstance, it is against the law. If someone ever touches your body in a way that invades your personal privacy, you should tell a trusted grown-up at once. Sometimes telling someone about it is hard to do, though, because you may have confused feelings about the situation. Maybe the touching gives you an uneasy feeling, but the attention it brings makes you feel special. Maybe you get treats or presents if you agree to touch or be touched, and you like those, too. And sometimes you might feel afraid because you know that if you tell what's going on, a lot more trouble will start. Still, touching between people should be a happy thing. If it makes you feel confused or bad, then you know it isn't right. If for some reason the adult that you go to for help doesn't believe your story, tell it to someone else. Keep on telling until the person who is touching you has been stopped. Molesting a child is an awful thing, so a lot of people will be very upset when they find out about it. Just remember that nobody is upset with you and that you are not responsible for the bad things that were done in any way. Children are taught to trust adults and to do what grown ups tell them. Adults who abuse the trust of children in this terrible way are completely to blame.
Why do snakes always stick out their tongues?
Although a snake's forked tongue darting constantly in and out of its mouth can look scary, it is actually quite harmless. Snakes repeatedly stick out their tongues not because they're rude, but because they are using their tongues to gather information. Snakes have an organ located on the roof of their mouths called Jacobson's organ. This organ processes tiny amounts of chemical substances that are picked up by the snake's flicking tongue. Each time the tongue goes out of the snake's mouth, it picks up chemicals from the air. The snake then inserts the tips of its delicate forked tongue into the two openings of Jacobson's organ, which can analyze the chemicals to tell if a nearby animal is potential food, or perhaps an enemy. Male snakes also use their tongues as part of a courting ritual, that is, the process by which they figure out if a certain female snake is interested in mating with them. The male snake jerks his body around, snapping his tongue in and out. And if the female ignores him, he knows to keep looking for a suitable partner. If she responds favorably, he's found his mate.
Do spiders really eat the bugs they catch in their webs?
Yes, most spiders live on insects and other related arthropods. Very large spiders can capture small birds and snakes in their silk traps. Spiders know they've made a catch because they can feel the vibrations caused by struggling bugs caught in their strong, sticky webs. Sometimes spiders tightly wrap their prey in silk to subdue them. They usually kill their prey by injecting them with a paralyzing poison or venom that they produce.
How did the days of the week get their names?
In the English language, some of the days of the week take their names from the celestial bodies that, according to ancient beliefs, ruled that day. So the day ruled by the sun became Sunday, the day ruled by the moon became Monday, and the day ruled by the planet Saturn became Saturday. The remaining days of the week take their names from figures in Anglo-Saxon or Norse mythology. Tuesday is named for the Anglo-Saxon god of war, Tiu, which is Mars in Roman mythology. Wednesday is named for Woden, the Anglo-Saxon name for the chief Norse god Odin. Thursday gets its name from Thor, the god of thunder in Norse mythology. Friday is named either after Freya, the Norse goddess of love and fertility, or Frigg, the wife of Odin and the representative of beauty and love.
What is a widow?
A widow is a woman whose husband has died but who has not remarried. She may or may not have children. Similarly, a man whose wife has died but who has not remarried is called a widower. You may be familiar with the word because of the poisonous black widow spider, which lives in North and South America. It gets its name from the fact that the female may eat the male after mating, making herself a widow.
What do we do after a person dies?
Throughout human history and in places around the world, People have done many different things with their dead. The ancient Egyptians, for instance, took great care when preparing the bodies of their dead rulers. It was believed that their leaders were immortal and would need their bodies in another world after death, the afterworld. In a process that took several months, ancient Egyptians carefully preserved dead bodies through a process called embalming. They wrapped the bodies with layers of linen, wax, and spices. Some of these mummies still exist today, some 6,000 years later. In the United States today, most people are buried in coffins. Funeral ceremonies take place so that people can honor the deceased and give comfort and support to his or her family and friends. Music, prayers, and eulogies, speeches remembering and praising the dead person are often a part of these ceremonies. A funeral usually ends when the deceased is taken to a cemetery, a place where bodies are buried in the ground. A headstone or marker listing the person's name, birth, and death date, and other information is left at the burial spot, which family members and friends may later visit and decorate with flowers in memory of their loved one.
Can flying fish really fly?
There are about 40 species known as flying fish. These small fish, around 18 inches, or 45 centimeters, long, are found in warm waters all over the world. They don't technically fly, but they can glide through the air, using wing-like fins and a powerful tail. When chased by a predator, a flying fish heads straight for the water's surface at a rapid speed, with its fins tucked in close to its body. As it breaks the surface of the water, it spreads its wings and uses its flapping tail, still underwater, to give it an extra boost. Flying fish don't go very high, usually just a few feet above the water, but they can glide for fairly long distances. As it reaches the water after a glide, a flying fish can use its tail to propel it up again for another run. Like a skipping rock that makes several bounces. A single glide can take a flying fish as far as 600 feet, 180 meters. And the total distance traveled over a series of consecutive glides can be as far as 1,300 feet, 400 meters.
Why does my stomach growl when I'm hungry?
Your body changes food into substances it can use for energy. When your body is low on food, it cannot make the energy it needs. Your brain and nervous system go into action then, making the muscles of your stomach walls squeeze together in order to digest food that isn't there. The actions of your stomach make you feel hungry, ensuring that you will seek out some food to eat that will soon be on its way to your stomach. In the meantime, though, gases and digestive juices in your empty stomach churn around, and you may hear growls. Scientists have a name for the rumblings in the digestive system that are caused by moving gas. Borborygmi, pronounced borborygmi, a word that sounds a lot like the noises your stomach makes when it's empty.
How does nuclear energy work?
We usually make heat energy by burning fuels: oil, gas, coal, or wood. In large quantities, such energy can be used to heat water, and the resulting steam can be used to run generators that make electricity. Burning fuel, combustion, is a chemical reaction that converts one form of energy into another. It recombines elements from the fuel and the oxygen in the air into things like ash, smoke, and waste gases, as well as heat. A fission-generated nuclear reaction produces heat in a different way. It breaks apart elements themselves, turning them into waste products with less mass, which creates a great amount of energy. The tiniest particles of matter, atoms of heavy elements like uranium or plutonium, provide the fuel for nuclear reactors. At the center of each atom is a nucleus, which is made up of even tinier particles called protons and neutrons. A nucleus is held together by a powerful force, and breaking up the nucleus releases that force. A nuclear reaction starts when fast-moving neutrons strike the nuclei of fuel atoms, causing them to break into smaller nuclei. These in turn release neutrons that break up more fuel nuclei. All this movement produces great heat, which can be used to make steam to run electric generators. The good thing about fission-generated nuclear energy is that very little fuel is needed to produce huge amounts of energy. 2 pounds of nuclear fuel could produce as much energy as 6.5 million pounds of coal, for instance. The challenging part is that the process must be very carefully controlled. If it isn't controlled, the chain reaction behind it could create so much energy and heat in a fraction of a second that the result would be an enormous explosion. This explosion is exactly what occurs in nuclear weapons. In a nuclear reactor, control rods that absorb neutrons are moved in and out of the core to control the process. A nuclear explosion is especially damaging because it releases harmful gamma rays known as radiation into the environment. This byproduct of nuclear fission is another problem connected with nuclear power. Nuclear reactors are encased in thick layers of steel and concrete to keep radiation from escaping. And because leftover nuclear fuel is highly radioactive, it must be carefully stored far away from people for decades or even centuries before it is safe again. Transporting and disposing of dangerous waste is another challenge presented by nuclear power. Most recently used fuel is sealed in safety containers and buried deep underground. The nuclear process that we get our power from is called fission, where atomic nuclei that break apart produce great energy and heat. But nuclear power can also be created by a process called fusion, where atomic nuclei join together. Scientists are still working on creating a satisfactory fusion reactor. The sun produces its great energy and heat through the nuclear fusion of its hydrogen gases.
Which is colder, the North Pole or the South Pole?
The Antarctic, the region of the South Pole, is colder than the Arctic, the region of the North Pole. Temperatures are warmer in the Arctic because there is no huge land mass there. And the ice cover in the region sometimes breaks, allowing some of the warmth of the Arctic Ocean into the air. It's hard to think of the Arctic Ocean as warm, but it has enough thermal energy or heat to raise the air temperature several degrees. The Antarctic, on the other hand, consists almost entirely of Antarctica, a continent of 5.5 million square miles, 8.8 million square kilometers. Covered with ice, with an average thickness of 6,500 feet, or 1,982 meters. Winter temperatures in Antarctica can be some 50 degrees Fahrenheit. 10 degrees Celsius, colder than those in the Arctic.
Where do people go after they die?
Because no one has come back to our world after dying. It is not possible to know for sure what happens to people after death. Nearly all the religions of the world believe that some kind of existence continues after life on earth stops, that a person's soul or spirit continues to exist in a way we can't really imagine even after his or her body is dead. In fact, a lot of religions teach the belief that our life on earth is a stage or time of preparation, or a test by which we're judged, that leads to a final perfect state of existence that we will share with God in a spiritual realm after we die. Many people who don't subscribe to religious beliefs about an afterlife think that people simply end when they die. That once the physical body has died, all awareness and existence ceases.
What can be done to minimize pollution?
Wherever there are a lot of people, and wherever there are industries, there will be pollution. It cannot be eliminated, but it can be reduced. And many laws have been passed in the United States and elsewhere to help accomplish that. These laws help establish pollution standards, requiring industries to release fewer pollutants into the air and water. But several obstacles remain. Some industries have successfully lobbied lawmakers to be less strict about pollution controls. Many industries are reluctant to cooperate with the laws that have been passed, stating that the required changes are too expensive, and federal agencies lack the funding to enforce the existing laws. So many companies ignore the tighter standards about how much polluting they can do. In spite of these obstacles, there is much that can be done to clean up our air, water, and land. Some car companies have begun building cars that burn fuel more cleanly or that operate on a more environmentally friendly mix of gas and electricity. Producers of gasoline can make adjustments to the fuel so that fewer harmful emissions are released when it is burned. Sewage treatment plants, if they install the right equipment, can remove nearly all the waste before dumping what's left in bodies of water. Factories can treat their waste to neutralize or remove much of the harmful chemicals before dumping. Alternative energy sources harnessing the power of water or the sun, for instance, can be used to supplement the gas and oil that is used now. Landfills can be constructed so that underground pipes carry away the dangerous methane gas, using it to provide power. They can also be covered with dirt, grass, and trees to create a playground or a park. Farmers can use fewer chemicals, relying instead on organic farming methods, free of man-made chemicals. Individuals and families can also play a part in reducing pollution. Taking part in community recycling efforts and using biodegradable items to create compost, which can then be used in the garden, helps reduce each family's weekly amount of garbage. Families can also make an effort to use less water and electricity. And choosing to buy organic food supports the farmers who have decided to avoid harmful chemicals.
How much snow makes an inch of rain?
Ordinarily, 10 inches of snow has about the same amount of water as 1 inch of rain. But temperature affects this general rule. The dry, fluffy snow we see during very cold weather holds less water. It could take 30 inches of that snow to equal 1 inch of water. The heavy, wet snow that falls when temperatures are just around freezing contains more moisture. As few as 3 inches of that kind of snow could melt into 1 inch of water.
Who decides which of the divorced parents their children will live with?
Because a marriage is a legal partnership, its dissolution, or end, takes place by a judgment of a court. The court, then, awards custody of children after a divorce. The judge that presides over the court makes this decision, ideally keeping the best interests of the children in mind. A judge's involvement is especially important when parents can't agree over who should be the main caregiver for their children and provide their main home. But in the best cases, both parents and children decide together how they would like custody to be awarded. And they let the court know their preferences. Sometimes joint custody is the solution, which means that the parents share responsibility for the kids. And the children divide their time equally between their mother and father and their separate homes. Most of the time, however, one parent becomes the custodial parent and the children live with her or him, while the other parent has visitation rights, which means that he or she can see the children at certain times, like on weekends or during summer vacations.
What is a skyscraper?
A skyscraper is a building of great height that has an iron or steel frame inside that supports its floors and walls. Before builders figured out how to make such frames, stone or brick walls had to bear the weight of structures, which could not stand up if they were made too high. And tall stone or brick buildings had to have very thick walls on lower floors to bear the weight of the walls and floors above them. These thick walls wasted a lot of useful space. Because cities have limited land, builders experimented with materials and construction methods in an effort to construct taller buildings that were more practical. Finally, in 1885, William L. E. Barron-Jenney built the first modern skyscraper, in Chicago, Illinois. While just 10 stories high, which seems short by today's standards. The home insurance company building was the first structure to have an internal steel skeleton bear all of its weight. From that point on, tall buildings began to soar into the air, scraping the sky. Just 30 years after the first skyscraper was built, buildings were erected that reached 60 stories high. Today, the Sears Tower in Chicago has the most stories of any skyscraper at 110. Of course, none of these great heights would have been practical if the electric elevator had not been invented. Skyscrapers, though, presented a unique set of problems. The buildings had to have a certain amount of flexibility so that strong winds and bad weather would not damage them. The Sears Tower is always swaying, averaging about 6 inches from its true center. Too many skyscrapers built close together also blocked out light and reduced airflow to the buildings and the streets below, creating unhealthy conditions. And fires were a special concern in skyscrapers because a small blaze on lower floors could quickly be sucked up elevator shafts and stairways, creating a deadly inferno. So builders learned to use fire-resistant construction materials, as well as safety features like smoke detectors, water sprinklers, metal fire doors, and fire escapes.
What causes day and night?
Besides orbiting around the Sun, Earth turns in a circle, or rotates from west to east on its own axis, an imaginary line running through the center of the planet spinning like a top. A complete rotation takes about 24 hours, or 1 day. When the part of Earth on which we live is turned away from the light of the Sun, we have nighttime. At the same time, people on the other side of the world have daytime. As Earth continues its movement, we move toward the Sun's light, and day comes.
Which spiders are poisonous to people?
Most spiders are capable of injecting venom into the animals they bite. But only a few can cause harm to humans. Two spiders most often associated with harmful bites are the black widow and the brown recluse. The black widow can be found all over the world, including throughout the United States, except Alaska. Females are far more common than males. The male usually gets eaten by the female after mating. Their shiny black bodies have red markings on the underside that are frequently in the shape of an hourglass. Black widows feed on insects, but they will occasionally, if they feel threatened, bite a human. A bite from a black widow, while it can cause a person severe pain and nausea, is not generally life-threatening. The brown recluse spider can most commonly be found in the southern and western United States. But it can also be seen in the northern states. A bite from this small spider may not be immediately detected, but after a few hours a painful blister may form. The wound can take several weeks to heal. In very rare cases, the bites of brown recluse spiders have been known to cause death in humans. These shy spiders are not aggressive and generally only bite when they are disturbed or handled. The funnel weaver spider, found in southeastern Australia, and certain kinds of tarantulas that live in Africa and South America have also been known to cause harm to humans. The Brazilian huntsman is believed to be the spider with the most toxic poison. It would take only 0.000000021 ounces, 0.006 milligrams, of this spider's venom to kill a mouse. If a spider bite occurs, the best thing to do is to try to collect the spider so it can be identified and to see a doctor as soon as possible. Most spider bites are harmless, though mildly annoying.
How many muscles do I have?
Scientists can't agree about how many muscles the human body has, depending on whether certain muscles are counted separately or considered part of a larger muscle. The numbers range from 656 to 850. Muscles make up almost half of a person's body weight. Every movement your body makes depends on muscles. Voluntary muscles, which you control with conscious thought. Move the skeletal muscles on the outside of your body. When you raise your hand or chew your food, for example, you are using skeletal muscles. Involuntary muscles, on the other hand, move things inside your body, usually without you thinking about them at all. Your heart pumps blood and your stomach and intestines move food through your digestive system. For instance, without your conscious thought.
Why do I have to say I'm sorry after behaving badly?
Everybody makes mistakes, even grown ups. Mistakes are a big part of learning to be a better person. If you behave badly breaking rules and hurting other people, it is important to show that you realize the mistakes you've made and the harm you've done, and that you will try to do better next time. Saying "I'm sorry" brings that message to the person you've hurt or disappointed and often makes him or her feel better. And even though it's very hard to apologize, you may find it will make you feel better, too. When someone has hurt or disappointed you and comes to apologize, try to forgive him or her quickly. Remember, that person is learning how to be a better person, just like you.
Do plants feel when they are cut?
Plants don't have nervous systems like animals do. The nervous system of an animal controls its actions and reactions to its environment. In complex animals, special senses send information, electrochemical impulses, along nerve pathways to their brains about things occurring inside and outside their bodies. Without such a message system, plants can't feel or react like animals do. So plants don't feel when they are cut. But plants do respond to things in their environment, like gravity, light, and even touch. Chemical messengers called hormones tell special cells and tissues how to respond to different conditions inside and outside a plant. Hormones tell seedlings to grow up from the ground, away from the pull of gravity. They tell houseplants to turn their leaves toward windows, where light comes in. They tell certain insect-eating plants to snap their leaves shut when prey lands there. They tell other plants to develop fruit following pollination. Although the many hormones that affect the lives of plants are not fully understood by scientists, it is clear that plants function remarkably well, though in very different ways from animals.
What is dust?
Dust is made up of particles of all sorts of things. In places where people live, a great deal of dust comes from flakes of dead skin, which are being shed all the time. Dust mites, tiny microscopic creatures that feed on this dead skin, make up dust, too, including their waste and tiny skeletons. Particles of the environment contribute to dust as well: grit from the sidewalk, salt from the sea, dry earth, pollen from plants, smoke from burning materials. And Earth gets 10 tons of dust from outer space every day. From the millions of meteors that burn up as they enter our atmosphere.
What is a cousin?
A first cousin is the child of your uncle or aunt. The term cousin can also refer to other family members to whom you are not as closely related.
How do dog years compare with human years?
It has long been thought that one dog year equals 7 human years. But many people believe another formula gives a more accurate picture. At age 1 a dog has the equivalent of 15 human years. At age 2 it has the equivalent of 24. After that, each additional year counts as 4 years. The average lifespan of a dog is 12 years, which, according to that formula, equals 64 human years. Large breeds tend to have shorter lives than this, and small breeds tend to live longer. The record is 20 years.
What is the purpose of dreaming?
While scientists aren't sure, they know that people who are prevented from dreaming, people whose sleep is interrupted, become crabby, slow thinking, and clumsy. So it is clear that dreams are needed to keep the brain healthy for some of its complex functions, like memory and concentration. Many psychologists and psychiatrists, professionals who study mental and emotional behavior, believe that dreams provide us with ways of working through fears and anxieties. These professionals often analyze their patients' dreams to figure out what might be troubling them. Our dreams often feature people we know and events that recently happened in our lives. Though dreams are frequently so strange and unreal that it's hard to recognize the familiar in them.
Why do I have to take a time out sometimes?
To help us survive, our bodies and minds are set up to respond a certain way to situations that we think are threatening. We react physically to such situations first, and we think later. This response was very useful in the lives of prehistoric men and women when they roamed the planet and faced physical dangers constantly. When a wild animal attacked, for instance, a cave dweller fled or drew his or her weapon without stopping first to think about the danger he was in. In the modern world, we find ourselves in very few situations that threaten our lives. But our bodies still react to things in the same instant, physical way. When troubling situations occur, our feelings come first before our thinking takes over. When someone does something we don't like, or that upsets us, our first reaction is to act on our feelings, which might include yelling or hitting. A person can get pretty worked up physically, which doesn't allow him or her to listen to the thinking messages that are also going on inside. When an adult makes you take a time out, it takes you away from the upsetting situation. Your body and feelings can settle down then, and you can start to think. It is normal and natural to react strongly to things that put your body on alert, but as you get older, you will begin to recognize that most situations don't require a caveman response. You will be able to control your feelings better and use thinking to guide your actions.
Why do I laugh when someone tickles me?
The millions of tiny sensors under your skin which detect touch, pain, and temperature send information to your brain about your surroundings, and your brain tells you how to react. When someone tickles you, your touch sensors are overloaded with messages. And your brain puts your body on alert, making your muscles tense to help you escape. During tickling, you always yell stop, and try to get away. Right? It's not exactly relaxing. You laugh because it is a way for your body to release tension if you can't stop the tickler. Exercise and laughter are good tension releasers for the body, both make you feel better afterwards.
What are vertebrates?
Vertebrata, or vertebrates, are a subphylum of the phylum called Chordata. Human beings, as well as most of the animals we experience in our everyday lives, mammals, birds, reptiles, amphibians, fish are classified as vertebrates. The most obvious characteristic of vertebrates is a backbone, which can be made of bone or cartilage. Vertebrates have a complex spinal cord that runs along the length of the animal's body and contains a nervous system. At the top of the spinal cord is a brain and sense organs that allow animals to see, hear, and smell. Vertebrates also have bodies that are bilaterally symmetrical, which means that the left side is basically a mirror image of the right. There are 45,000 living vertebrate species. Vertebrates live in nearly every region of the world, adapting to life on land, in the air, and in the sea.
Why do I have to do household chores?
Running a household is a lot of work. Your parents do most of the chores required to take care of your family's food, clothing, house, and yard, especially when you are young. But as you become older, your strength and skills increase, and you can help out. Household tasks are called chores because they usually aren't fun to do. You can probably think of plenty of activities that would be more entertaining than cleaning your room or mowing the lawn. But these things have to be done by somebody. And it is only fair that everybody in a family does his or her part. And when all family members pitch in, household chores get done more quickly. And everyone has more time to do the things that they like. So when you do household chores, you are really showing that you care about your family. Also, taking on such additional responsibilities is a part of growing up, preparing you for the time when you will have to do those jobs by yourself.
Where does our clean water come from?
Rain is the source of the water we use. It collects in rivers and lakes and in human-made gathering places called reservoirs. Or it sinks into the ground, where it is pumped back to the surface by wells. Water usually has to be treated before it is safe for drinking and general use. It has to be free of harmful bacteria and chemicals, as well as substances that make it look or taste bad. Water is pumped from lakes, rivers, or reservoirs through huge pipes to water treatment plants. There it is filtered to remove large pieces of debris, like twigs and dead fish. Two special chemicals, aluminum sulfate and lime, are then added. These make the small particles of dirt left in the water cling together in tiny lumps called flocks. Pumped into a sedimentation tank, the water is allowed to settle, with its flocks gradually sinking to the bottom for removal. Ready for more filtration. The water is run through layers of stone and sand that remove fine particles of dirt. Bacteria are then added to eat any microscopic creatures that may still be present. A chemical called chlorine is added to kill the bacteria once their job is done. Other chemicals may be added to make the water softer so that it works better with soap for washing or healthier. Fluoride, for example, is often added to prevent tooth decay. Once treatment is complete, water is sent through huge tubes to storage places, tanks, or covered reservoirs where it is ready for use. It is pumped into communities through big pipes located just underground called water mains. These mains supply homes and businesses with water through smaller pipes that attach to faucets and other outlets. In order to meet the needs of communities, treatment plants can produce many millions of gallons of fresh water every day. Next time you fill a glass with water, think about the incredible journey it took to arrive there.
How do farmers grow food?
Raising crops involves a few simple principles. Although farming has been around for about 10,000 years, a vast sweep of time in which tools and methods have changed a great deal, the basic principles remain the same. The first step in farming involves preparing the land for planting. The second step involves planting the seeds, or cuttings or seedlings. The third step involves helping the seeds to grow. The fourth step involves harvesting the mature plants and often processing them so that they can be used as food. Fruit growing and raising livestock for milk and meat are other types of farming. Preparing land for planting involves breaking up the soil with a plow. Early plows were heavy pointed sticks that people pushed through the earth. Later, the points of plows were made of iron, and their shape became broader and flatter. Plow blades are called shears. These plows sliced bigger furrows, big grooves, into the soil and flipped it over as well. While first powered by people, plows were soon designed to be pulled by animals because they had to be heavy to cut through hard ground. Usually a team of oxen or horses pulled a plow while a farmer guided and pushed it from behind. Today, powerful tractors pull plows that dig up several furrows at a time. After plowing, early farmers pulled heavy rollers and harrows flat rake-like devices over the broken soil to make it even finer and ready for planting. Today, cultivators with rows of pointed metal prongs are pulled behind tractors to do the same job. Before planting machines, farmers sowed seeds by hand. It was a wasteful process because the wind blew seeds away as they were. Scattered and hungry birds ate them before they could be covered up by dirt. But in the early 18th century an English farmer named Jethro Tull greatly improved the sowing process by inventing the seed drill. It was a machine that cut several grooves into the soil and then dropped small amounts of seeds held in a compartment called a hopper down tubes or chutes into the neat rows. Crops could be grown in straight lines then, which made weeding easier. Special hoeing machines were made with blades that fit between rows of crops to uproot weeds. Like a plow, the seed drill was usually pulled by horses and guided by a farmer who walked behind it. Today, of course, tractors provide the power that pulls similar sowing machines. There was not a lot that early farmers could do to help seeds grow once they were in the ground. At that point, it was really up to nature to provide the things that were needed for growth like warmth, sunlight, and water in the right amounts. Early farmers could add natural fertilizers, like manure, to enrich soil. And they could pull weeds that competed with growing plants. They knew about the benefits of rotating crops. Growing different plants in different fields each year to keep the soil fertile and free of diseases and pests. In dry areas, early farmers even developed irrigation systems that delivered water to crops. But modern science has given today's farmers many more reliable tools to help seeds grow. Chemical insecticides, for example, kill pests that threaten crops, and selective herbicides kill weeds without damaging growing plants. Other chemicals called fungicides help eliminate plant diseases. In addition, genetically altered plants and chemical fertilizers have allowed modern farmers to grow more plants than ever before. Before modern machinery, harvesting crops was a painstaking process. Gathering and removing mature plants from the field had to be done by hand. Farm workers used sharp blade, long-handled scythes and curved sickles to cut down cereal crops like wheat. Even the fastest reaper could only clear about a third of an acre a day. Because rain could ruin harvested wheat, workers called sheaf makers quickly tied it into bundles, so that it could be safely stored if the weather turned stormy. During the long winter months, farm workers used jointed wooden tools called flails to thresh or beat the dried wheat in order to separate its edible grain seeds from its stalks. But in 1786 a machine that threshed wheat by rubbing it between rollers was invented, replacing human threshers. And around 1840 a reaping machine whose revolving wheel pressed grain stalks against a sharp blade that cut them down replaced human harvesters. Today, farm machines called combine harvesters do this work in much the same way. These machines are very efficient and combine all three jobs of cutting, collecting, and threshing a crop. A single combine harvester can process 5 acres of wheat in less than an hour.
Do all flowers close at night?
Many flowers close at night, or when the weather is cold. They start to shut as sunlight begins to fade. Studies have shown that the temperature inside a closed flower, where a plant's important reproductive structures and pollen are located, can be several degrees warmer than the surrounding air outside. In some flowers, the warmth attracts pollinating insects, who spend the night there. In the morning, when sunlight returns, flowers open again, ready for insects and other animals to feed from them and spread their pollen. Some plants are even known to close their leaves at night. Some flowers remain closed during the day and open at night, like the evening primrose. Such flowers follow that schedule because the creatures that feed from and pollinate them like moths and bats are nocturnal, or active only at night.
Why should I wash my hands after I go to the bathroom?
Feces contain a lot of bacteria. Once solid waste exits the body, it attracts more bacteria, which use it as nourishment to grow and multiply. While some types of bacteria are harmless, other kinds can cause infections and other problems. When you wipe yourself after going to the bathroom, you may get invisible traces of waste on your hands and transfer the bacteria in it to other parts of your body or to objects that others may touch. But this problem can be eliminated by a good hand washing with warm water and soap, for about 2 minutes. Because we live closely with one another, it is important to follow rules of cleanliness or hygiene, to protect our own health and the health of others.
Why do flowers look different from one another?
The way a flower looks depends a lot on the way it is pollinated. Flowers that depend on the wind for pollination are usually small and plain looking, because they don't need to attract the attention of insects and birds to carry their pollen. But flowers that do depend on the carrier method need ways to attract the animals that will help them cross-pollinate. And flowers are often structured in terms of color, scent, and shape to suit a particular insect or animal visitor. Many flowers attractive to bees have parts that act as landing platforms, so the bees that visit them can rest their heavy bodies while feeding. Bees can see most colors, except red, and they are attracted to colorful flowers. And because bees use long sucking tubes to collect pollen and nectar, the flowers that they visit often have long, Narrow shapes. Butterflies like many of the same flowers that bees do. They, too, have long, sucking mouth parts and like to land when feeding. Their large wings keep them from traveling deep into flowers, though. For this reason they prefer flowers that are flat, broad, and clustered. Butterflies are attracted to all bright colors. Moths, which are similar to butterflies, are nocturnal, which means they are active at night. So the flowers they are attracted to tend to be light-colored. Or white, the kinds of flowers that show up well in the dark. And because moths tend to hover in the air when feeding, they need no landing platforms on the flowers they visit. Hummingbirds have a poor sense of smell but see color well. The flowers they prefer are bright red or orange and supply plenty of nectar in their deep, narrow blooms. Flowers pollinated by flies, which are attracted to decaying matter, where they tend to lay their eggs, are generally dark green, purple, or brown colors that resemble the rotted material flies prefer. The flowers that bats feed from have large openings for their snouts, and strong parts that the animals can grip onto with their claws.
What's the advantage of having holes in donuts?
From a baker's point of view, it makes it easier to cook the cake more evenly. Because the heat of the hot oil can penetrate from the outside and from the inside. Without their holes, donuts would sometimes end up with uncooked middles. And if a baker tried to fry a holeless cake a little longer to get the inside done just right, the outside would often be overcooked.
Which of the big cats is the most dangerous?
Probably, for people, the most dangerous of the big cats is the leopard. Although not as large as the lion or tiger. The leopard, a good climber that lurks in trees and on the ground, will attack a human when hunting or when startled. Lions and tigers usually try to avoid fights with people.
What is a sibling?
A sibling is a brother or sister. Most brothers and sisters share the same mother and father. But sometimes siblings have the same mother but different fathers. Or the reverse, the same father and different mothers. Siblings that have one parent the same as you and one different are said to be half-brothers or half-sisters. You may have siblings who have a different mother and a different father from you. Those siblings are considered step-brothers and step-sisters. It doesn't really matter how you are related to your brothers and sisters, though. They are still an important part of your family and can be wonderful to have around.
Why are male birds more colorful than female birds?
In some species, like the North American cardinal, the male bird has brilliantly colored feathers while the female's feathers are drab and dark. One reason the males have a more colorful appearance is so they can capture the attention of the female bird they wish to mate with. The male's bright colors also come in handy after mating. When he's protecting the nest and sending a clear signal to other males to keep away from his territory. The female's dull colors, on the other hand, help her blend in with the branches surrounding her nest and avoid being seen by enemies. If her feathers were bright like the male's, she would be easily spotted by predators. And she would have to leave her nest unprotected if attacked.
Which of the big cats is the largest?
The colorful, striped tiger is the largest of the cat family. One type of tiger, the Siberian, is bigger than any lion. A male Siberian tiger can reach 13 feet, 4 meters, in length, including his tail, and weigh up to 650 pounds, 295 kilograms.
What plants produce some of the smallest seeds?
Orchids produce the smallest seeds. They measure no more than 0.04 inches, 1 millimeter, in length. And 1 million orchid seeds might weigh less than an ounce, less than 28 grams. Seed size has no bearing on the size of the plant that grows from it. Orchids grow to a larger size than many plants that have much larger seeds. And a huge redwood tree begins as a tiny seed no more than 1/16 of an inch, 1.6 millimeters, long.
What is a laser?
A laser, which is short for light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation, is a device that produces laser light. Laser light is more powerful than ordinary light because all its rays have the same wavelength and move together, allowing them to be focused in a narrow beam with great precision. The rays that make up regular light are made of several wavelengths that spread out in all directions once they leave their source. A laser beam can be focused on so small an area that it can put 200 holes on the head of a pin. Laser light beams vary in strength, depending on the materials and amount of energy used to make them. Some made of invisible infrared rays can create so much heat that they can cut through metal. Because laser beams can be controlled with such precision, these same infrared rays can be used instead of scalpels to perform the most delicate surgeries. Lasers that produce visible light beams are equally useful, both in scientific work and in our everyday lives. Because laser beams can measure great distances with such accuracy, for example, they have been reflected from mirrors placed on the moon to record our exact distance from it. Telephone and computer signals are sometimes changed into laser light so that they can travel with great speed through glass fiber optic cables. Low-powered light lasers read the barcodes on the labels of products we buy at stores and scan the patterns etched on compact discs to give us music.